Good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock. The code board is now in session. Do we have Bobby with us today?
I'll be here with you, Ms.
Thank you. Would you like to call the roll for me, please? Thank you.
Sure. Chair Wade?
Present.
Vice Chair Archer is absent. Mr. Weeks?
Here.
Mr. Kramer? Is absent.
I saw him before. Can we?
He's on.
He's here.
I'm here.
Okay. Mr. Robinson? Ms. Norfleet?
Present.
Ms. Tellier?
Here.
And Mr. Perfidio?
Here.
Very good.
No.
I'll have. Do we have Mr. Trask with us today for
Yes,
the
I'm here.
invocation and the pledge? If you'll give the invocation and the pledge, please.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Our Father in heaven, we seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We gather to make decisions for our community. May we use only our best skills and judgment, keeping ourselves impartial and neutral as we consider the merits and pitfalls of each matter that is placed before us, and always act in accordance with what is in the best interest of the city of Tarpon Springs. This we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Are we going to do a pledge?
Yes. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'm going to read the hearing procedure so everybody will kind of understand what we're doing. It's the intention of this board to promote, protect, and improve the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens of Tarpon Springs by providing an equitable, effective, and inexpensive method of enforcing various codes within the city of Tarpon Springs. Any aggrieved party may appeal a final administrative order of this board to the circuit court. Such appeal shall be filed within 30 days of the execution of the order to be appealed. Florida Statute 286.0105 requires any party appealing a decision of this board to have a record of the proceedings to support such an appeal. The procedure of the board is as follows. First, the city presents its witnesses and exhibits, after which the alleged violator is able to ask the city's witnesses any specific questions regarding their testimony. Secondly, the alleged violator is allowed to make a presentation and present his or her witnesses and exhibits. Then the city can question the alleged violator's witnesses. After both rounds of testimony, both on the part of the city and on the part of the alleged violator, each party is asked to give a closing argument, first by the city and then by the alleged violator. After those three steps are taken, this board will close the public hearing portion of the case to discuss it and take appropriate action. We'll swear people in as they testify because the Zoom strategy works a little bit differently. But if everybody would please turn their cell phone off, that would be helpful. And then Beth, do we have any agenda changes?
Yes, we do.
Alrighty. If you're not Beth, but you'll work. Thank you.
Right there.
Okay.
The two that are complied.
Yeah, we just have, let's see, agenda item.
Number two.
Number 2 is deferred.
Yes.
Number 4 is complied and number 5 is complied. So that's really the only changes. Otherwise, we'll take them in order.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Mark, is the other alternate number 2, Mr. Stamus, on?
1 second, let me check. No, I do not see.
Oh, okay, thank you.
We don't get to welcome him yet, I guess, next time. All right. The first agenda item is 445 East Martin Luther King. I think it's owned by Wells Fargo Bank. It's item number 19-8000795. Is there anyone present for this agenda item? Mark, any hands?
Agenda item, please raise your hand.
I think we would.
I do not see any raised hands at this time.
Alrighty, then they can't make any objection. If you'd like to present your evidence, Officer Gasson.
He'd be sworn in first.
Oh, okay, dokes, thank you. Mr. Trask, if you'd swear him in, or Ms. Manousis.
You want me to do it, Tom?
Go ahead.
You swear from the testimony you're about to give in this proceedings the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. This case before the board is 19-800000795. The property address is 445 East Martin Luther King Drive, currently owned by Wells Fargo Bank, N.A., with Carrington Mortgage Loan Trust underneath of it. We have no prior case for this particular property owner. Exhibit number 1 going before the board are all the photographs. Exhibit number 2 are all my notices, including notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit number 3, administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. And exhibit number 4 is an affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All the notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearing are sent return receipt requested, as well as first-class mail. And Madam Chair, please accept all these exhibits into the record as evidence.
Yes, thank you.
There's a little back history with this property. It has been the source of numerous complaints for the neighbors. The property went all the way through Code Board back in 2018, but we had to quash that case because there was a name change that wasn't recorded until after Code Board. So that case was quashed. Reinitiation of a foreclosure proceeding took place about 2 years ago, and it finally completed. So legally, there was no one to notice as the original property owner was deceased. So as of April 2020, Wells Fargo won the foreclosure bid on this property. So they are now, from everything we can tell, the current and legal property owner of this property. So we're here again on this property. So we've had no contact with the owner. We have had some contact with a law firm, Van Law, and Tammy Calderon from the attorney's office. Barring all the 2018 things, the case restarted November 7th of 2019. Per the city utility department, there was no active water connection. And at the time, there were people living in the house. On December 4th of the same year, the notice of violation was mailed to the tenant. It was returned signed by Brenda David. On December 18th of 2019, I conducted a reinspection by checking with the utilities, and the water was terminated in August of 2019. There was also a utility lien added to the property, and there were no new connections recorded. On February 3rd of 2020, I conducted another reinspection. Still no change. There was no connected utilities or anything at that time. It should also be noted, and I'll show you the pictures if you haven't seen them, there was a lot of debris on the property, and I have not been asked to go back to conduct a reinspection under any of the owners. So at this point in time, I have no reason to believe that behind the fenced-in area, those violations still do not exist. So those were prior, and my belief is they still do exist. On May 19th of 2020, conducted another reinspection. As I noted here, the 2018 case, which had trash and debris, that's when we quashed it due to the property owner change, and that was under case 18-181. We finally figured out through all the records information about who the new owner was, and then we started to properly notice them. A notice of violation was sent to the owner. The green cards were returned by Wells Fargo and CT Corporation. On July 13th of 2020, an email was sent to Van Law requesting help to provide a notice of violation to their client. I conducted another reinspection on July 16th and still not in compliance. On August 20th, another reinspection was conducted after communication with the attorney trying to get a hold of the property owner. We tried to get updated information, and there were no changes in the property county or the property, Pinellas County property appraiser. And at that point, we decided to send a notice of hearing to the owner of record, the registered agent, and the tenant. On August 20th, the notice of hearing was mailed. It was returned by Wells Fargo and C Corp. On August 28th, I posted the property and signed the affidavit, and then conducted another reinspection on September 9th, the final inspection. Nobody's still gone back to invite me onto the property. The water is still disconnected. It's unknown if any persons are still living in the house. And we did confirm with the utility department that the water was still turned off. So before the board at this point in time is a violation of City Code 6-1, which adopted the 2015 building code because it was an older case. And then under that, IPMC 505.1, which requires that homes be connected to city water or a plumbing system. 8-22, the accumulation of trash. And if you haven't seen the pictures, I'll be happy to put them on the screen and you can see that. Duty to maintain private property and nuisance prohibitions. I'll bring up the pictures.
Thank you.
See them. So this was the property, pile of debris. This is one of the more recent pictures. July of this year. Then going back, this is, sorry, it's sideways. Inside of the fenced in area, that is the green pool. These were back in 2018. And like I said, I haven't been able to go back inside this area to determine if this exists or does not exist any longer. This is trash and debris along the side of the house. Let me see if I can flip this around a little bit for you guys. If that helps. Now it's too big. And the next one will probably be sideways and I'll have to change the view again. Hey, look at that. So this is the inside of the fenced in area. And like I said, I haven't been back there to be able to re-inspect it. So I have no information that this doesn't still exist. But as stated, the water is still not connected. There is still a pile of debris out back in the driveway that hasn't been cleaned up. So that's the current situation. And unless somebody wants to see something else in this, I'll stop screen sharing. Is this all right, Chair? Can I turn that off?
I'm thinking.
All right.
Is the home for sale?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not at this point. Yeah, the bank just owns it now.
Does the board have any questions for city staff?
The bank doesn't know if anyone's residing in the property?
They won't.
Banks are interesting. They won't tell us any of that information. They say they won't go on it if there's somebody in there, even if it's a squatter type situation. I haven't seen anybody recently, but knocking on the door, nobody answers. So, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. The same situation applied before when we knew people were living there. You knock on the door, nobody would answer because we're still the police. So.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions?
You have no real contact with Wells Fargo?
They're not incredibly cooperative.
Oh,
And I guess Beth's been contacting their attorney and attempting to have the attorney get the client to help us with this problem. And that's been pretty much unsuccessful to this point.
maybe a very large fine will get their attention.
This is why we're here, sir.
If there are no more questions, we'll entertain a motion. Would anyone on the board like to start the motion?
I will. I
Thank you.
move, based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented by law, that at the time of the alleged violation, sections City Code 6-1, City Code 8.22, 8-40, 8-52, and IPMC Code 505-1 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect, and the respondent was in violation thereof.
Second that.
Would you like to call roll for us, please? I think there's no other discussion. Ms. Manousis? Michelle?
You're on mute.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll call roll again. Mr. Perfidio. You can vote today?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Tellier?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Chair Wade?
Yes. Following that, do I hear a second motion?
I move that the respondent shall have until October the 15th to bring the property into compliance with code sections 6-1, 8-22, 8-40, 8-52, and IPMC Code 505-1, or suffer a fine of $400 a day for each day thereafter that the respondent remain in violation of said code.
I'll second that too.
You're limited to $250 a day.
Okay. Let me say that it's $250 a day.
Still a second.
Thank you, Michelle.
Mr. Perfidio?
Aye.
Ms. Tellier?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Chair Wade?
Yes. We'll skip down to item number 3 on your agenda. It's 1000 Peninsula Avenue, USA Federal National Mortgage Association, and it's item number 20-8000092.
Thank you.
Gasson.
Yeah, again, Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department, Code Enforcement, case 20-800000092, 1000 Peninsula Avenue. Property is another bank-owned property, USA Federal National Mortgage Association. It is a structure, and you'll see the pictures. We have no prior cases for this owner. Exhibit number 1 are all of my photographs and officer photographs that were taken. Exhibit number 2, all notices to include notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit 3 is the administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit number 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All the notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collectors database. All notice of violations and notice of hearings are sent return receipt as well as first-class mail. And Madam Chair, please accept all these exhibits into the record as evidence.
Yes, Michelle, please do so.
Hold on a second. We need to make sure that there is nobody here on this particular case. We haven't asked whether or not that there is anyone present.
Thank you for helping me there.
Okay,
If,
so
Mark, is there anyone that would like to present their side?
If anyone is here for this case, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed to talk.
okay, thank you.
Sorry, thank you.
Ready?
Yes, please.
The only contact we've had, and it wasn't really with the owner, it's with a resource center at Fannie Mae that helps with property maintenance. This case started March 18th of 2020. The property's vacant. It's not being maintained. At the time, the lawn was overgrown. On March 18th of 2020, we noticed Notice of violation was mailed. It was returned with insufficient address for Fannie Mae, vacant for the tenant, so we got nothing back. On June 3rd, conducted a reinspection because everything got put on hold for a few months. Conducted a reinspection, it was not in compliance. Now there was a pile of debris out front. The property's not being maintained. During that period of time, graffiti had been put on the building, and the police have been called out due to juveniles being out there damaging the property and putting some graffiti on it. And so we added the graffiti violation back then. On June 3rd, all of our email had been returned, so we contacted Fannie Mae, actually spoke to somebody. She gave it a case number for their maintenance people, and their records show that they do not own the property, although the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector shows Fannie Mae as the owner, and she's referring our office up the chain, and hopefully we'll be contacted in the next few days, which I don't think has happened as of yet. So an amended notice of violation was mailed on June 3rd. That mail was returned no longer at this address. Conducted a reinspection on July 16th, still not in compliance. There was some more graffiti added, and the debris was still out front. And apparently patrol's been having problem with trespassers getting actually into the house itself. We had a phone call, email from the Consumer Resource Center about a fax that we'd sent them and information that they're the servicer for record for handling, and they were going to provide some information, and they were alluding to the fact that Bank of America was a servicer for the property, but they wouldn't give us any more information. So at that time, on July 16th, the final notice of violation was mailed, and it was returned no longer at this address. August 25th, conducted another reinspection. There was no change to the prior violations, but now somebody was nice enough to actually dump a trailer in the front yard, adding to the debris collection. On August 25th, sent an email again to Fannie Mae Resource Center to let the property owner know it changed, and we were sending a notice of hearing. On the same date, received a phone call from the servicer, which was Safeguard, and we forwarded all the information to them as well, and we haven't heard back from anyone since then. On August, we sent the NOH. That green card was returned from Fannie Mae headquarters. And on August 28th, I posted the property and signed the affidavit for it. Conducted another reinspection on September 9th of this year, and there was no change. The violations before the board, and I'll show the photographs when you guys are ready. 8-40, duty to maintain private property. 8-52, nuisance prohibitions, which includes debris. And then 6-1, which adopts the 2018 version of the International Property Maintenance Code, or IPMC. And under that, IPMC code 302.9, which is defacement of property and deals with graffiti, and it's the responsibility of the property owner to cover that up or remove it. So those are the violations before the board. And if it pleases the board, I can share those photographs.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Hopefully nobody's offended by the language, but here's some of the graffiti. Some, not sure what that is, but it's graffiti.
Happy face.
And they tore out the screens and entered the building around the back. You can see it's not being maintained back there. Same thing, yard's overgrown, all the screens were torn out. And then inside of the house, there was graffiti done, holes punched in the wall, things like that. So does anybody have anything with these pictures? You need me to rotate that, or are you okay?
Okay.
Okay. Smiley face on there.
Oh, okay. Question for Mr. Trask. When these types of properties become nobody's property and we tack on fines, does that make it that much more difficult for somebody to buy it, rehab it, and make it usable again?
Well, we need to get the property owner involved, and they have done that by way of the records that they received from the property appraiser's office. So, but to answer your question, if there is a lien on the property, yes, it has to be addressed before the property would be sold free and clear. There's always a marketable title issue. So anybody that's purchasing, especially a new homeowner, they would want to make sure that those liens are addressed. But You should focus on, is there a violation or not? And then.
I understand.
So,
Just information.
sure.
Thank you. Does anybody else have questions for Officer Gasson? Would you like to summarize your case?
I think I've taken care of that already, ma'am. Thank you.
Public portion of the testimony is closed. I'm ready to entertain a motion.
I move that based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented and the law, that at the time the alleged violation sections 8-40, 8-52, 6-1, and IPMC 302.9 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Tarpon Spring was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Second
Thank
that.
you. Thank you, Michelle.
Mr. Perfidio,
Yes.
Ms. Hellier,
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
and Chair Wade.
Yes. Since that motion has passed, if nobody has any comments, we'll entertain a second motion.
I move that the resident shall have until October the 15th to bring the property into compliance with code sections 8-40, 8-52, 6-1, IPMC 302.9, or suffer a fine of $250 a day for each day thereafter that the respondent remain in violation of said code sections.
I'll second that as well.
We'll make one note. He accidentally said resident, I think, in his first line, and he just intended to say respondent.
Okay.
The motion has been made and seconded. Michelle?
Mr. Perfidio,
Yes.
Ms. Hellier,
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Chair Wade.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question. We said number 4 has been complied, but do you still want?
Yeah, 4 has been complied and it's off the table and we're moving on to number 6.
Thank you. My phone's ringing, sorry. Number 6, 1673 Sea Breeze Drive, Peter Tumillo, 20-8000229. Mr. Jump, is anyone here for that property?
If anyone is here for this item, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed to talk. We do have a raised hand, so I'll allow them in.
We'll need to swear them in.
If you could please state your name and address for the record.
Peter F. Tamillo Jr., 1673 Seabreeze Drive, Tarpon Springs, Florida, 34689.
Okay, sir, if you could raise your right hand, I'm going to swear you under oath.
Yes, sir.
You swear the testimony you're about to give is going to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, do you have any legal objections why the city's evidence should not be received?
No, I don't.
And tell me your first name again, Peter?
Peter?
Okay,
Pete.
thank you.
Everybody calls me Pete. So.
Okay, thank you. Officer Gasson, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. The case before the board is 20-800000229. The property address is 1673 Seabreeze Drive. The property owner is listed as Peter Tumillo. We have no prior cases for this address. Before the board, exhibit number 1 are all the photographs and any screenshots, things like that. All the notices, to include notice of violation and notice of hearing, are exhibit number 2. Exhibit number 3 is the administrative documents, case summary, property appraiser, and tax collector records. Exhibit number 4 is an affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. All of the photographs and exhibits that have been given to the violator are exact copies of what's being presented to this board. All notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County Property Appraiser and Tax Collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearing are sent return receipt as well as first class mail. And Madam Chair, please accept all the exhibits into the record as evidence.
Thank you, Michelle. If you'll do that for us, please.
We have had contact with the owner, Mr. Tomello, via phone calls and emails, kind of constant contact. This case started back May 18th of 2020. We received a complaint about this property being used as a vacation rental or a short-term rental, tourist rental, whatever you want to call it. And we found a listing on Airbnb for the property and verified that it was a short-term rental advertisement. In fact, on it said that the minimum stay, I believe, was 7 days or 3 nights. There was one of them listed as 3 nights. Due to COVID, nothing kind of happened with it for I don't know, do we need to, we don't have to address that, do we, at all? Okay. So we mailed the notice of violation in July because of COVID, and it was returned unclaimed at the time. On July 23rd, I guess there was some information and talk with planning and zoning, and they would not support rezoning the property because the violation before the board is essentially the zoning code based on the type of property that it is and the zoning district that that property falls into. On July 31st, Mr. Tomello actually asked for this case to be brought before the code board to be heard. I informed him that we could do that, but I have to naturally let it progress through the steps, which includes, doing a notice of hearing and so on and so forth. So on August 5th, I conducted a reinspection and, he requested to be added to this hearing, and the advertisements on Airbnb had not been changed to the minimum of 6 weeks. They were still being listed for the 3-night stays. On August 10th, the notice of hearing was mailed. It was returned unclaimed. On August 28th, I posted the property and signed the affidavit of posting. And on September 2nd, conducted another reinspection. The Airbnb link, which is in here, it's still showing a minimum of 3-night stay. And then on September 9th of this year, we verified the Airbnb link still shows a minimum of a 3-night stay. And an email was sent providing all the Zoom information to Mr. Tomello, who's obviously here, so he got that information. The violations before the board are City Code 25.02, which is single family residential district, and using the property as a tourist home or a short-term rental is not allowed in the code, and it is not permitted nor a conditional use. So as of right now, it's still being advertised for that purpose, and it doesn't seem that anybody denies that it is a short-term rental, and that's what's before the board at this point. And as of right now, the city has nothing further.
Would you be willing to show us your pictures, please?
Certainly. Hang on, let me scroll. This is one of the listings, and I will flip it around real quick so you can see the highlighted part showing that it is being listed for a period of minimum stay 3 nights.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll scroll up. This is just basically pictures of the house. This is another listing, and let me flip it back around. It's just another calendar showing it's the property itself, the blue house right here. Back of the property. These are pictures of the property from the website, as you can see. And that's a state statute that we can discuss later. There's the Google Street View of it. This was obviously older when it was being constructed. Mr. Tomello did do a fair amount of work on the property. It had previously, with prior owners, been a code complaint, and he did fix it up, and then unfortunately started to rent it as a short-term rental in violation of city code. So you want me to keep these up, or you want me to stop sharing?
You don't need to share anymore unless someone else needs to see further. But I needed to, if we were going to put them in the record, I thought everybody should see them. Thank you, Michelle. Pete, do you have any question? You'll get a chance to present your case in a second, but do you have any direct questions for Officer Gasson?
No, nothing that needs to be asked right now.
Thank you. Then you get to present your side of the case.
Okay, so I agree that a code exists. My biggest issue is that the code seems to be enforced very sporadically. And when I did purchase the home was in disrepair. I mean, it hadn't been taken care of. I put a lot of money into that home, and before I purchased it, I did speak to the people at the building department to make sure that when I was done, that I would be able to rent it out. And I did let them know it would be a short-term rental. Now that it's there, I've seen the code. I'm not going to deny that it's not there, but I'm adding value to the neighborhood as well as I'm adding value to the city of Tarpon Springs. The people that do come spend money in the community. The home is no longer an eyesore. It's well maintained, well taken care of. The people that are there don't cause any issues. I have letters that Beth, I sent them to her today from 3 of the neighbors that attest to that. One of them is Frank Perry, where when there were issues previously that Officer Gasson had brought up, Frank was very adamant. He did not want short-term rentals on the street. He wanted everything enforced. I respect that. And if I were causing a problem, I wouldn't be here. But the issue is that you do have a code. Unfortunately, it only gets enforced when someone feels like it. I don't understand how that works. And my bigger concern is that I have put money into the home. I do want to live there eventually. I'm not in a position where I can do that currently. Part of the reason that everything got returned was because I let everybody know in my emails, if you want to take a look at the thread, that I'm currently in Pennsylvania. I was willing to come back today to present this in person if it had not been virtual. That's how I like to do things. But at the end of the day, I know here in Pennsylvania, and I shouldn't probably use this as an analogy. If you're not going to enforce a code across the board, then it's null. It's mute and void. I guess that's not the way things work down there in Florida. I understand you all have a job to do, but what I'm asking is that if the code's not going to be enforced across the board, why can't we allow this to continue? Because there's about 100 rental homes in Tarpon that currently do this. There's another one on the street that's been doing it for 8 years. The main reason we're here is because we have one neighbor that's disgruntled, that doesn't live in her home full time, knows that it's a rental home, but nobody's caused any issues. There's no police complaints, which is what I was told up front. If there were police complaints about noise, disturbance, things along those lines, I was going to be asked to stop. As long as I didn't do that, or as long as there weren't any complaints, it was going to be a non-issue. But it's an issue now, so we're all here. We have to address it. I just don't understand why the code is not enforced for everyone. And to me, it feels like I'm being singled out. And I've gone above and beyond to make sure that everything I do, between construction, treatment of the neighbors, code compliance when it comes to construction, everything is above board. So I'm asking for your assistance. And the bigger thing is that given COVID right now, I'm bringing money into Tarpon Springs. And I could have gone and gotten 100 letters from different businesses. I've spoke to them all. They were willing to come in person. I haven't.
Madam Chair, at this point, I'd like to object to relevance. We've kind of covered that. I think we're stick to the violation. This isn't relevant to business owners and things like that.
Thank you. Pete, you hear what he's saying? Just stick to the point. Sorry.
The point is that the code is not enforced across the board, and I'm being singled. It feels like I'm being singled out. And I've done everything. I've spoke to who I thought were the right officials, asking for guidance and forgiveness at this point.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Tomillo? Mr. Tomillo, you can summarize your case, but we got the gist of it. So if it's just a repetition of that, I'm not sure if it.
Madam Chair, the city may have cross-examination. Officer Gasson should have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you. I skipped that step. Sorry.
Okay.
Officer Gasson,
Just a couple
did
of
you have
quick questions. Mr. Tamillo, are you still renting that property for less than 6 weeks? Or still advertising it to be rented for less than 6 weeks?
I was waiting until the outcome of this hearing. Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. And you are aware of our city code. Did you ever make contact with the code enforcement department prior to making the decision to start renting it as a short-term rental? Or did you just go by what the building department told you?
I went what I was told by the building department. I was not told to go to code enforcement. But
Okay. And you are aware that is a city ordinance violation, correct?
as of now, yes, sir, I am.
Okay. I have no further questions at this point. I'd just like the opportunity to summarize.
Then Mr. Tamillo, do you have anything else?
No, ma'am, I do not. I will do a repetition of what you've
Thank
already
you.
heard.
The public portion of the case is now closed. Board, I'm ready to entertain a motion.
We should give them the opportunity to summarize. Officer Gasson said he wanted to summarize his case at least.
All righty.
Yeah.
Just for the board's information in general, we do enforce these across the board. This board has heard numerous short-term rental violations before, but
Yes.
our department is complaint driven. So when we do get complaints, and there was a complaint about this property, again, I don't necessarily know the motives or whatever behind the complaint, but obviously it was a legitimate complaint. The original complaint alluded to a police complaint being out there, but I can't verify that, but that's what the information was. And then when we started to research it, we found that it in fact was a valid complaint. So, and as Mr. Tamillo knows, he's opened numerous violations or complaints on other properties for doing the same thing. So we are enforcing it as we always do. So as far as it being selective in any way, shape or form, it's not. He was treated exactly the same as all the other vacation rentals have been treated. We just don't actively web crawl these and try to find them. That takes an enormous amount of resources and is just not something that the city is in a position to do at this point. So beyond that, as he stated, he's still renting it. The code clearly states it's not a permitted or a conditional use for the property, and as such is in violation. So the city has nothing further.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? Then I think the board's ready to entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to ask Mr. Perfidio a question. I think that he had a question as to whether or not he needed to abstain from this, and I just wanted to give him the opportunity to address that issue before the board goes ahead and makes a motion and votes. So, Mr. Perfidio, did you have a question about possible abstention?
Well, I live on the street, and I do know of a rental that's on a VRBO, but it's a minimum. I think it's like a 6 day or 1 week minimum, and I don't know what the rules are with regards to short-term rentals. And I don't know if I thought it was 6 days or 7 days minimum up, but so Mike, is there any issues with me voting or should I abstain or?
You do not have a conflict under what we call the size of the class test because it's citywide and you're just one person in the city.
Okay.
And it's not, it does not cause a conflict under the remote and speculative test is the other one that we use. So you have the opportunity and you have an obligation as a board member to vote on the matter.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
I think now we can entertain a motion.
I move that based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented by law that at the time of the alleged violation, sections 25.02 of the Code of Ordinances, the city of Tarpon Springs was in force and effect. The respondent was in violation thereof.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Bruce. Is there any discussion?
I just have a question of Officer Gasson. Based on this, we've agreed that there's a violation and this is still out there for advertising. Can we then have this stop immediately and not have a grace period? You know, sometimes we give a few days, Officer Gasson.
I think that's a question for me since the public portion of the meeting has been closed. The answer is that you need to give a reasonable period of time for the property brought into compliance, and you determine what that reasonableness is.
Okay,
Obviously, if the property owner can take it down in a day, then maybe a reasonable period of time would be a day. So you make the determination of what's reasonable. Once you get to that portion of that particular motion, this one is just to determine whether or not he is in violation at the present
okay.
time. Yeah,
Thanks, Mr. Trask.
you're welcome.
Michelle, would you like to call roll? This will be for that first motion.
Mr. Perfidio,
Yes.
Ms. Tellier,
Yes,
Ms. Norfleet,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Chair Wade.
Yes. The first motion has passed. The second motion, we're waiting to hear. Someone like to make that?
I move that the respondent shall have until October the 9th to bring the property into compliance of code sections 25.02, I'm sorry, or suffer a fine of $50 a day for each day thereafter that the respondent remain in violation of said code.
Second.
Any discussion? Michelle?
Mr. Perfidio,
Yes.
Ms. Tellier,
yes,
Ms. Norfleet,
Yes.
Mr. Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Weeks,
Yes.
Chair Wade.
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you like to summarize for him, Mr. Trask?
Yes, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Tamillo, you've been found in violation of Code Section 25.02. The Code Enforcement Board has ordered that you bring the property into compliance by October 9th. Should you fail to bring the property into compliance by October 9th, you're going to be assessed a $50 a day fine for every day that you continue to be in violation of Section 25.02. There will be an order entered. It will be done in writing and it will be sent to you at the address listed at the property appraiser's records. That will be done within about the next 10 days. Should you have questions as to what you need to do to bring the property into compliance, feel free to call code enforcement after the meeting to discuss the issue.
Understood.
Thank you. Item number 7. This is a repeat violator. 1725 Sunkist Drive, parcel 10, 27, 15, 86, 850, 000, 0140, the Harris Family Real Estate Trust. And it's item number 20-8, 0000379. Is anyone here for that case?
If you're here for this, please raise your hand and you'll be allowed to talk. We do not have any raised hands at this time, Madam Chair.
No raised hands, thank you. Officer Gasson?
Thank you. Officer Steve Gasson, City of Tarpon Springs Police Department Code Enforcement. This is a repeat violator case before the board. The previous case that established him as a repeat violator was 18-800000762, which was a violation of City Code 8-40 and 8-52. Previously, they had been fined $10 per day and had a $306.50 fine, which has been paid. The case before the board today is 20-800000379. The property address is listed as 1725 Sunkist Drive, although it is a vacant lot owned by the Harris Family Real Estate Trust. Its parcel number is 102715-86850-0000140. There were numerous prior cases on this property. Exhibit number 1 going before the board are my photographs. Exhibit number 2, my notice of violation and notice of hearing. Exhibit 3, administrative documents, case summary, previous board orders, property appraiser and tax collector records. Exhibit 4 is the affidavit of posting and a copy of the sign. And exhibit number 5 is the affidavit of prosecution costs. All the notices were mailed to the property owner of record as determined by the Pinellas County property appraiser and tax collector databases. All notice of violations and notice of hearing are sent both first class as well as return receipt. And please accept all the exhibits into the record as evidence, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Michelle?
We've had no contact with the owner, but we have spoke to a realtor office has emailed us regarding this case. Case started out on July 24th when I conducted the initial inspection. The complaint was that the property was overgrown. At that time it was, and I took some photographs. On July 24th of 2020, the repeat violator notice of hearing was mailed. There was no mail returned to us. On August 25th and August 27th, we received an email from the realtor. And then on August 28th, the property was found to be in compliance. On that same date, I posted the property and signed the affidavit of posting. The board should note that based on the email from the realtor, they stated the property was in compliance on August 27th. So from July 24th until it was complied on August 27th. And that was for a violation of City Code 8-40 and 8-52. So it was out of compliance July 24th to August 27th.
Did you have pictures for us?
I do, if you guys are ready.
Yes, thank you.
There is said overgrown lot. Picture one,
What is that?
it's a power box. And here's just another picture looking off to the adjoining property, kind of demonstrating how long it was. It was well over a foot at the time. Those are the only two pictures I have.
Thank you. Since there's no one to object, Michelle, if you'll put that all in the record, please. Does anybody have questions for Officer Gasson? You want to summarize your case, Steve?
I think I've covered it. Thank you very much.
The public portion of the case is now closed. Board, I'm ready to hear a motion. This will be on the repeat violator form.
Right. I moved that based on the testimony, evidence, facts presented by law, that the respondent was in violation of 8-40 and 8-52 of the Tarpon Springs City Code from July the 24th till August the 27th, for a total of 35 days. And a fine of $20 a day for 35 days, total fine of
700.
35 times 20.
700.
Yeah, 700. Okay, $700. And the city be awarded $69.50 for the cost it incurred in prosecuting the case.
Does anybody have a question on that? Here a second.
Second.
Ms. Manousis, would you call roll, please?
Mr. Perfidio? Mr. Perfidio? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Collier?
Yes.
Ms. Norfleet?
Yes.
Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
You're on mute, Mr. Kramer.
Mr. Kramer? Mr. Kramer, you're muted.
I'm sorry, no.
No? Okay. Mr. Weeks?
Yes.
Chair Wade?
Yes.
Motion passed.
I don't see any need to summarize since nobody's there. Next item is affidavits of non-compliance. The agenda item 19-80000664 47 West Tarpon Avenue, Zoe Co. Is anyone present for this case, please? Mr. Jump, any hands raised?
No, ma'am, we do not have anyone in attendance.
Thank you. Mr. Gasson, would you like to present anything?
I have nothing to present.
Thank you. If the board doesn't have any questions, we'll hear a motion.
I move based on the testimony, evidence, and facts presented in the law that the respondent failed in a timely manner to comply with the board's prior order within the time prescribed and to award the city the $258 in prosecution costs.
Second.
You can do a voice vote on this one, Michelle. All in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. There are no affidavits of compliance. There is no old business. We do have some minutes to approve from the August meeting. I hope everyone's had a chance to review those. Did anyone find anything where they needed to make changes?
Yes. Norfleet,
Yes.
I have a question on 12. When my computer went out and I did not record a vote, it said did note vote instead of did not vote. Does that make any difference?
We can correct it.
Okay, I just didn't want anybody to be confused.
This doesn't guarantee that.
I move
Thank
that
you.
accepted as printed.
Thank you. Second, anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Do we have any board or staff comments?
I have no comments.
I want to thank the board for sticking with us through all these Zooms. I appreciate it very much.
This is actually getting easier
A little bit.
as we get used to this.
Just in time for it to be
And
over.
I don't have to get dressed. I love it.
Don't stand up.
And if I had a cocktail over here, you wouldn't know it. See?
Thank you.
Say he had a comment.
I'm sorry.
I thought Officer Gasson said he had a comment.
He said no comment.
No, ma'am, I do not. Thank you, though.
If there's nothing further, the meeting is adjourned. It's 2:58. Good job, team.
Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
And